good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, because we have people registered from North America, from Europe. We even have few participants from Africa, and of course, South Asia with lots of interest. And it's my pleasure. I'm Suman Timsina. It's my pleasure to be a host for today. And I'm representing International Development Institute. And I'm here to introduce host organization and moderators for today. And they are a lot more knowledgeable on subject matter than I am, and they will uh, be doing 60 minutes interaction altogether. And first, the panelists will speak for a few minutes. And we have received many questions when you were registering, so will entertain those questions with panelists. And if time permits, we will take few questions live as well. And this event is being broadcasted live on Facebook pages of host organization, International Development Institute, and IMPRI. So let me just go ahead and introduce both organizations first. So International Development Institute is a Washington DC-based leading training and capacity building institution. And we work with private and public sectors in all the continents. And four core areas that we work is on learning and development, policy formation and advocacy, research and consultancy, and institutional partnership, with our presence in Nepal, India, Bangladesh, and Nigeria, Kenya, Rwanda, and United States. And our partner organization is New Delhi-based Impact and Policy Research Institute, IMPRI. It specializes on policy research, impact assessments, and monitoring and evaluation. Their subject verticals are in comprehensive areas of economic development, governance, and the environment. Its core strength relies on network of diverse and credible research professionals from different field of study and practices. And with this difficult time the entire world is facing with COVID, I just wanted to make sure that we are all safe and we are using every single precaution that and following the guidelines of whichever country we are in. And and it's a very difficult time, and there is not much we can probably do other than just trying to stay safe. And with those notes, I'm just going to go over some housekeeping. So some housekeeping rules are the our speakers are going to keep their microphone mute so that there's no background noise when the other panelists are speaking. And I have my colleagues in the background, Arjun, Parashu, and Roshan. Thanks for helping us in all these efforts. And I'm going to introduce our our moderators, and then moderators will come, and I'm going to disappear for a few minutes, and they will take, and you are in safe hands with them after that. And first moderator I'll introduce is Dr. Ambika Adhikari. He has been a longtime friend with us. He lives in city of Tempe, Arizona, and is a principal planner for the city of Tempe. He's heading its long-range planning division. He's also a senior sustainability scientist and frequently faculty associate at Arizona State University. And he has earlier held position of research professor at the university. He was director of international programs at DRPA Incorporate in Toronto and Washington, DC, providing consulting services to projects funded by the World Bank, ADB, and Canadian International Development Agency. In Nepal, he was associate professor at Institute of Engineering at Tribhuvan University, and later country representative of IUCN, International Union of Conservation of Nature. He's a fellow of American Society of Nepalese Engineers, member of American Institute of Certified Planners, a certified lead, leadership in energy and environmental design, an accredited professional and PMP. He received his Doctor of Design degree from Harvard University and Masters of Architecture from University of Hawaii. He was fellow special program at Urban and Regional Studies at MIT. He has authored 1 and co-edited 5 books related to planning, environment, and development. He has published number of journal articles and write-ups in newspapers, etc., etc. So Dr. Ambika Adhikari, and I'll introduce my other colleague who will be moderator for tonight, and she is Dr. Simi Mehta. And Simi is the CEO and Editorial Director of Impact and Policy Research Institute, IMPRI. She holds PhD in American Studies from School of International Studies at JNU, New Delhi. She was Fulbright Fellow at Ohio State University in USA. She has been visiting faculty to University of Idaho, visiting researcher at Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO of UN Liaison Office in Washington, DC. Her areas of research includes US and India's agriculture and foreign policies, international security studies, sustainable development, climate change, gender justice, and urban environment. She is a avid writer. She frequently writes in the print and electronic media and research journals, and is the author of the book Lessons on Sustainable Development from Bangladesh and India. It's published in 2019 by Palgrave, New York. She's a managing editor of Journal of Development Policy Review, hosted by Indrastra Global New York. So having said that, Ambika ji and Simi, so it's all yours. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Suman sir. And Ambika sir, with your permission, I would begin the program. So good evening, everyone from New Delhi. On behalf of the Center for International Relations and Strategic Studies at Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, and International Development Institute, Washington, DC, I extend my warm welcome to all the participants on Zoom as well as on Facebook Live. I thank the esteemed panelists for making time from your busy schedules and coming together to discuss India-Nepal relations. Founded on the age-old connections of history, culture, tradition, and religion, both countries have enjoyed the fruits of multifaceted engagements with each other. Diplomatic ties between the two countries was cemented on 17th of June, 1947, with a commitment to the principles of peaceful coexistence, sovereign equality, and an understanding of each other's aspirations. High-level state visits from both sides have been an icing on the cake, and this has strengthened the vibrant bilateral relations. Amidst all this, there was a sudden jolt to the bonhomie after India's defense minister virtually inaugurated a new 80-kilometer long road in the Himalayas at the Lipulekh Pass with Dharchula in the state of Uttarakhand. This was protested by the government of Kharga Prasad Sharma Oli, as it contended that the road crosses the Nepalese territory, and accused India of changing the status quo without diplomatic consultations. Very soon, the Oli government responded by making a constitutional amendment to the administrative and political map of the country, showing that the Limpiadhura, Lipulekh, and Kalapani as part of its territory. This generated strong protests from the Indian state. In this situation, the strategic importance of the region cannot be underrated. This new road is perhaps the quickest and the shortest route from New Delhi to the Tibetan Plateau. It is an important trade route and a passage for thousands of pilgrims to visit the holy Mount Kailash. Therefore, there is no doubt that it is in the best interests of both the countries to settle the border disputes and display pragmatism in their bilateral relations. To provide an in-depth perspective on the border dispute, we have with us an expert panel from India and Nepal. I'm delighted to introduce to you our guests from Nepal. We have with us Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Minendra Rijal from Nepal, who is a member of the Central Working Committee of the Nepal Congress Party. He has previously served as a Minister for Information and Communications and as a Minister for Constituent Assembly, Parliamentary Affairs and Culture. Dr. Rijal is also one of the architects of the mixed electoral system adopted by Nepal to ensure greater social and gender diversity in the Constituent Assembly. He is also currently a shadow finance minister, member of Parliament of Nepal since the year 2006. Honorable Dr. Rijal is also uh, a member of the special committee to oversee supervision, integration, and rehabilitation from former Maoist combatants. He is also a former member of the National Planning Commission of Nepal. Dr. Rijal earned his Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Law, and Masters in Management from Tribhuvan University in Nepal. He has also earned a Masters of Management degree from SUNY at Buffalo, New York, and an MPhil and PhD in Operations Research from the Stern School of Business at New York University. Dr. Rijal has also taught at New York University for 3 years, at Kathmandu University and Tribhuvan University, and also lectured at Lancaster University in UK. Dr. Rijal has 35 years of experience in research, teaching, and consulting in the fields of quantitative analysis, optimizations, operations management, business management, transport economics, financial analysis and planning, economic analysis, public policy formulation, and development economics. He has worked extensively with the government, universities, non-profit organizations, private sector organizations, and international institutions. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us this evening. Our next guest for tonight is Mr. Ajay Pradhan, who is joining us from Vancouver, Canada. He is a senior policy advisor in the Government of Canada on comprehensive land claims treaty negotiations. In this role, his responsibility includes policy analysis and advice in the area of nation-to-nation reconciliation on comprehensive land claims of asserted territories of indigenous people on a tripartite basis, Canada, British Columbia, and the First Nations Summit. He has managed the principles process in the British Columbia Treaty process and advised Canada's Ministry of Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, one of the 3 principles of the treaty process, and has managed the treaty-related measures to provide contribution funding to the First Nations in treaty process to advance reconciliation. He has studied the resource economics and policy at Duke University in Canada and in USA, excuse me, and he lives in Vancouver. Thank you very much, sir, for joining early in the morning from your place, and a very good evening from India. Over to you, Ambika.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Simi Mehta. Let me introduce the 2 distinguished gentlemen from India. They are so accomplished that I'm probably going to make it a little short bio because they're very well known in the community. First of all, Ambassador Sood. He's a distinguished fellow at Observer Research Foundation, ORIA, in New Delhi. He joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1976, first serving in Brussels, Dhaka, Geneva, and Islamabad in many different capacities. As a Deputy Chief of Mission in Washington, D.C., at the ministry, he set up the Disarmament International Security Affairs Division in the Foreign Ministry in India and led it for 8 years. He had served as India's first ambassador and permanent representative to the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva, and later as ambassador to Afghanistan, Nepal, and France. After retiring in 2013, Ambassador Sood was special envoy of the Prime Minister for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation, a position he held until May 2014. Many other hats, but I think this should do for now. Major General P.K. Chakravorty is the winner of the Silver Gun in his Young Officers course. He tenanted prestigious appointments in the Indian Army, serving also as the Defense Attaché to Vietnam, where he developed his interest in the Asia-Pacific region. A prolific writer and strategic thinker on security issues, his erudition renders logic and substance to his writing and explores options, often new and substantive. Major General Chakraborty holds a PhD from Hindustan University in Chennai and MPhil from Madras University. He's written numerous periodicals, books, and articles, and his areas of interest are strategy, firepower, defense procurement, net assessment, South and Southeast Asia, Indo-Pacific, and left-wing extremism. The officer is also associated with the projects and articles on Indian Council of Historic Research in New Delhi. So very highly accomplished 2 individuals from India. So Simiji, do you want to start, or you want to give me a little bit of a background and start the question? What is your
Yes, I can just give a little bit of a background to the distinguished panelists.
Okay.
So the way we'll hold this session is that we would request all of the panelists to give their opening remarks for 5 minutes each. And after your opening remarks, we'll have 2 sets of questions by Ambika sir and myself. And after the questions have been answered, we'll be taking some of the questions that have already been sent to us on email. And then we'll be taking questions from the chat box, depending upon the time. So I request all the participants to write their questions and identify the panelist whom the question is to be asked. So this is the format. So with this, I request Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Minendra Rijal, to make his opening remarks. So could you please unmute your mic?
Inviting me, Sumanji, Ambikaji, Parsuji, and others. Certainly very good to see Ambassador Sood after such a long time. I mean, he's been a good friend. First of all, let me try to introduce this as something that is not very new. A lot of people, I believe, I might be wrong here, but I mean, a lot of people in India do have a feeling that this is something Nepal has brought up very recently and at the behest of some political developments, which is not true. We've been saying this for the last 23 years. In 1997, when then Prime Minister, Right Honorable I.K. Gujral visited Nepal, we brought up this issue and was recognized as a pending issue, one of the pending issues between our 2 countries. In 2000, when Prime Minister G.P. Koirala visited India, this was recognized as one of the outstanding issues. Since then, in all bilateral meetings, this issue has been raised, and we've been consistently saying that this is something that both sides will have to sit down and resolve it. From India also, we have always heard that India is willing to sit down, and there was a joint border management committee which worked for a long time, resolved almost 97% of the border dispute between our 2 countries, and that to the satisfaction of both the countries. And there are certain places where we still have differences, and since we are neighbors, I mean, we cannot change neighbors. I mean, no matter how prominent India will be in the international scenario, Nepal will still remain as a neighbor of India. And no matter how and where we are, as Nepalese, I mean, India is a very important friend, very important neighbor, and we have, as was rightly pointed out by the host, that our relationship has been age old and very friendly relationship. Actually, I mean, it predates the formation of our respective political countries. I mean, we, in past, even before when Nepal was there and India was there, people from both the countries, I mean, did have a very close rapport with each other. Having said that, I guess, I mean, now we all have to recognize that the situation today is not what one would like to see continue for too long. Provocations that were there on both sides, I would say on the Indian side, and certainly on the Indian people or policymakers will probably will be right, will certainly say that they were not very pleased to what they heard from Nepal also. That's okay, but on both sides we have to sit down and resolve this. One of the things we have heard, even despite all the difficulties we have faced in the recent past, is no matter how strongly worded statement has come out from India, one of the things that has been consistently mentioned in the communique has been that both sides will have to sit down and find a solution peacefully and through diplomatic means. We're ready for that. And one of the things we're waiting was once the COVID crisis is over, both sides can sit down, present their evidences and look at the evidences and decide on the status of the outstanding issue. I guess it will be people on both sides, policymakers on both sides will be well advised to be very patient, to be respecting of each other, and also, I guess, people from both sides and policymakers from both sides should talk to their respective people and tell people or educate people that the importance of ties between our two countries are of paramount significance to both countries. Our relationship certainly has been, and will be on sovereign equality basis. And this is one of the difficulties we have, but there are many other things that keeps our ties as close as they have ever been. But this is something that has to be resolved by both the sides. I would not dwell into the details of the evidences, what is written in the Sugoli Sandhi, Sugoli Treaty, how was the map that was drawn in 1827, 1846, 1856, or many other facts. And these, I'll leave it up to Ajay Pradhan, who I'm sure is more competent than me on these issues. That's his expertise also, to bring those out. But again, I mean, having said that, these are the issues that both sides, when they sit down on the table, they will have to attend to. So with that, I guess if I have finished my 5 minutes already, I'll just stop there.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir, for providing your initial remarks. And certainly we'll get back to you with a number of questions that are being raised. Thank you very much, sir, for making your opening comments. I would now request Mr. Ajay Pradhan to provide his initial thoughts on the status of the border disputes related to the Limpiadhura, Lipu Lake and the Kalapani area. If you could provide a little bit of history, data, and your own personal experience and your observation and analysis to the dispute, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. First of all, just a disclaimer. I am present in this event as a member of the Nepali diaspora, and I'm not representing my employer, the government of Canada. So with that, I just want to delve into the nature of the issue here. First, I think Dr. Mehta a moment ago alluded to the age-old ties between the two countries, and there is no doubt about that. We have very strong cultural, linguistic, religious and socioeconomic ties between the two countries, kinship and family ties across the border, common culture and religion and shared traditions through linguistic commonality rooted in Sanskrit language, economy and trade and open border. And in addition to that, many of Nepal's political leaders in the past contributed to the independence movement of India. And likewise, many Indian leaders, political leaders, have extended their moral support to a number of political movements in Nepal. So, these are the hallmarks of the relationship between the two countries that have coexisted for millennia, even well before the independence of India, as a very productive and in a very productive and friendly relationship. This border issue has arisen as a bit of a pause in that relationship. But I am very positive, very hopeful, and very much certain that this will be resolved over time. I'm not sure how soon that will happen, but this is, even though this is an irritant, this also offers both countries an opportunity to not only sustain the age-old ties, but also to strengthen the relationship between the two countries. So I think if we look at this irritation or irritant as an opportunity rather than an obstacle to our relationship, I think we can begin an honest and open discussion across a negotiating table. So how do we start about how to go forward? I think the first step for both sides would be to honestly acknowledge and accept that there is a dispute. Just ignoring the dispute is not going to get us anywhere. So that is the first step. And then comes the issue about the evidence sharing by both countries with each other, and each country will be doing their own strength of claim analyses, on the evidences and records submitted and shared by the counterpart. That's how I think the negotiation process will begin. And this is the just a process to maintain a the relationship that the two countries have. And in doing that, I think it is incumbent upon both sides to the dispute to acknowledge, not only acknowledge the dispute, but also to understand the concerns of each other. So I think, I'm not sure what the motivations are about the, with India about the construction of the road and that sort of thing. But I suspect that Nepal government has to be receptive to the concerns of India. And in my own judgment, I see three key motivations or three key concerns that India has. One is the strategic security. The second is the cultural and religious pilgrimage to Kailash Mansarovar. And third, not the last one, but the trade and transit to broader China and Tibet through Lipulekh Pass. With the negotiated, negotiation process, I think the two parties can come to a negotiated resolution and settlement, which is much more preferable to a court settlement. I don't think court settlement is the way to go. Negotiated settlement across the table and through diplomatic channels, not through public media and Twitter, but through diplomatic channels and face-to-face across the table, negotiation table, should be the way to go. I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. Ambika sir, over to you. Could you unmute your mic? Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Simi Mehta. That was wonderful. Before I go to Ambassador Sood and General Chakraborty, Dr. Mehta laid out a really good background, which was also added upon by Mr. Pradhan and Dr. Rijal. Just a couple of sentences I would like to add to frame the whole thing, and then I'll come to Ambassador Sood. The relationship between Nepal and India is also very asymmetrical. These are neighbors, but in terms of population, India is 47.5 times bigger than Nepal. In terms of the geographical area, India is 22.5 times. Economy of India is 100 times that of Nepal. And the Indian exports to Nepal just amount to about 2%. So there's some level of asymmetry, but things were spoken before. We have a shared heritage, most importantly, open border. And majority of the disputes do happen among the enemies or people who are not very friendly. We happen to be very, very friendly for a long period of time. And more importantly, we have very similar values that we share. That is democracy, diversity, culture, language, peace, and the belief in Panchashit. The nation state of Nepal is also now has a lot of aspiration as a modern nation state. It wants to be treated with respect, dignity, and equality while understanding the reality. With all of that thing given, Ambassador Sood, just the way that Dr. Rijal and Mr. Pradhan gave a little bit of the beginning outlook, if you can provide us a brief analysis from your perspective. And let me also mention that because of the short period of time, we're not going back a lot with the data and the history, but more on how to move forward is our emphasis. But please do feel free to bring any data and analysis that you wish. Ambassador Sood.
Thank you. I think it is important to go back a little bit into the history for the simple reason that unfortunately a lot of myths get created, and sometimes it is important to dispel these myths. As everybody knows, India became independent in 1947, and we inherited the boundary that had been drawn up between the East India Company and Nepal. So, and that boundary was essentially drawn up by the Treaty of Sibauli. Before India became independent, there were already maps of British India, and there were maps of Nepal. And none of these maps include the territory that has been questioned. After 1947, as Dr. Rizal also told us, it was in 1996-97 that the matter was raised for the first time. And obviously India said, yeah, sure, let's sit down and talk about it. When I was ambassador in Nepal, and I remember my time there with great affection, I have had occasion to talk about this. And the subject that was often talked about was the issue of Kala Pani. Now, Kala Pani, as you know, is a very small piece of territory. And the issue was that India had a military and sometimes the ITBP, paramilitary force camp there. And at no point in time was the issue of Lipu Lake or Limpia Dura brought up at all during these talks. So, be that as it may, I mean, I have maintained and I have stated this publicly on more than one forum, including in an interview with the well-known Nepali journalist Kanak Dixit, that I do think that India should have engaged in a dialogue with Nepal when Nepal was officially asking us to discuss this matter. And I think that because we were somewhat tardy in doing so, I guess Nepal was a little upset. But having been a diplomat and having seen how governments work, we also know that we had certain changes in our ambassador. We had a change of foreign secretary, and these things also tend to, then what happens is that you end up looking at the urgent and not the important. However, I do think that neighbors should be looked at as both urgent and important. And that is something that I do maintain. So we should have taken it up. Now, having said that, I still don't see why the inauguration became such a major issue, for the simple reason that the road had been under construction for more than 10 years. At no point in time during these 10 years had Nepal protested about the alignment of the road. Dr. Rizal is a politician, and I'm sure he will agree with me that politicians love to inaugurate projects. And so it is quite natural on the part of the defense minister to have wanted to inaugurate this road, particularly as this was a road that is used by pilgrims going to Kailash Mansarovar, and the pilgrimage season normally begins around this time. So I guess he wanted to sort of appeal to a certain popular base, and that was understandable. Why that should have suddenly triggered a desire to not just to amend the map, but then to further solidify it in terms of through a constitutional amendment, I fail to understand the motivation of that. I mean, I do not want to get into the issue of Nepal's domestic politics here, but we do know that Prime Minister Oli has been having a certain amount of problems. And in fact, he took this as a political lifeline. But now, the way I look at it is that official level talks are pointless. Because no official, no foreign secretary, whether the foreign secretary of Nepal or the foreign secretary of India, can actually sit down and have the mandate to change the maps. So I think we will have to wait and see for some political guidance, because now parliaments have adopted constitutional amendments, and maps have been changed. So I guess we have now created a territorial dispute between India and Nepal. and it is not going to be easy. I don't think it will be very difficult for people to have to get around this. And I think this will certainly be remembered as Prime Minister Oli's lasting legacy to have created an insurmountable problem in India-Nepal relations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Sood. I'm going to ask the same question to Major General Chakraborty. And if you could be brief, maybe within 3 to 5 minutes, because we'll come back to some of those issues later on. Just give you a viewpoint as a background, Major General Chakraborty.
Thank you, Dr. Adhikari and Dr. Simi. And I'm grateful to all the panelists because I've had a good chance of hearing to everybody's views, and I can therefore give my views. A little bit about myself. Being from the Indian Army, the first unit I landed had people from Nepal. So my relationship with Nepal is beyond borders and beyond all these issues. And when I visit Nepal, when I go to Pokhara, I feel I'm back into my own unit. People are receiving pensions, and the relationship for the Nepalese to me meant giving life and death. So all these issues which you are bringing out, well, I'll put them into correct perspective. Firstly, dealing with borders is nothing new for India. Firstly, I must say we are settled with Bangladesh, such a major issue without making any things. You have brought up a problem which, as Ambassador Sood correctly said, none of us knew. We knew of Kalapani. The road was being made by the border roads, and it's 80 kilometers road. And all of a sudden, the defense minister goes and inaugurates, and a big issue is made. The issues, and at the same time, please understand what is the overall issue in the world. We have got COVID going on. We have got a serious issue with China going on. And definitely, you will say, well, it's something which the president has signed, the constitution amendment. But as a military man, I also understand Nepal a bit too well. After all, we are paying almost more than $1 billion of pension every year. And as you brought out all the statistics, one statistics which I want to bring out, Nepal is about 2.81 crores or so. That is the exact location I received right now. And we have got 130 crores. So we are 65 times your population. And we have a heart which is very big. There are 7 million Nepalese. And the best part I want to share with you, I must say this, while you can come and build a house here, you can have a marriage, I can't do that in Nepal. And let me tell you, the state in which these three regions are, and since Dr. Ajay Pradhan is sitting over there, is the state of Uttarakhand, and in Dehradun, we have got a sizable people from Nepal who are settled down, who are doing beautifully. I just go and meet them every year. So therefore, these two areas have definitely come like a bolt from the blue, as Ambassador Sood. I mean, I won't even report Lipule and Lipumitra. Definitely at one night, no. Kalapani certainly was an issue which was raised, and definitely, but the point is now you have taken it to such a level, well, as an army man, nothing surprises me. Because we deal with Pakistan, we deal with China. I've written about the entire China border and how exactly two prime ministers, Jawaharlal Nehru and Zhou Enlai, and our diplomats struggled for so many years, and we are still struggling. So don't worry, as far as we are concerned, Nepal is not certainly China, Nepal is not Pakistan. Nepal is too close to us. It's a relation of blood. Your people lay down their lives for me. So it's more than what you're talking of a map. Maps are something an army man deals every day. They will get resolved. Yes, now how you resolve it? Would you like to go to the courts? We require definitely political guidance, and the political guidance as we are looking at it. Prime Minister Oli definitely did the issue in a very quick things. There are so many things being raised which I don't want to bring up for obvious reasons. I would like to put at the military level. Please understand that the Chief of Army Staff of Nepal is also a general of the Indian Army. Probably this may be known to you, and our Chief of Army Staff is also your general. So with these close relations, I see nothing that is impossible. There's nothing to worry. The border, you can still cross it. Please, people from that side are coming this side. From our side, they're going that side. 1,751 kilometers is an open border. And we certainly have full respect for your people. Please come, settle down, build a house, marry over here, do whatever you want. Why are you so worried that in such a short time your president signs an amendment? At least speak to them. As I said, there are diplomats like Ambassador Sood, ambassador is there. Speak to them. We have a defense attaché. Probably the biggest defense mission is in Kathmandu. So I would like that the whole issue be seen in correct perspective and see the closeness that we have, and then look at it not as something which is insurmountable, but definitely look at it as something now, how do we find a solution? And I think the stakes are in Nepal. India can do very little unless you think about it in a different way. If you now include 4 more places, all that we have to say is, okay, please add this to the dispute.
Thank you so much, Major General Chakraborty, for your very passionate remark. Now, Dr. Simi and myself will alternate and ask some questions on how to go forward. I yield to Dr. Simi Mehta for now.
Thank you, sir. And thank you all the esteemed panelists. My set of questions is directed to Dr. Rijal and Mr. Pradhan. It's perhaps you could combine these set of questions with responses that you would like to make to your to the Indian panelists. This is the question is the fact that India's relationship with Nepal goes beyond the current map dispute to a much larger set of ties. What do you think are the ways towards potential resolution of the issues? And how should the government of India and Nepal approach this topic, given the importance of the long history of friendly relations, especially the people-to-people ties? What are some of the emotional and strategic issues that are related to the area subject to the border dispute? And it also appears very clearly that both sides in the dispute feel that the other side has acted to trigger the escalation of the dispute. What are your thoughts on that? And what kind of initiatives both the countries should take to improve the current environment for fruitful negotiations? I would request Dr. Rijal to go first. Yes.
Let me just try to clarify a few things first.
Yes.
Nepal, back in 1961, Nepal census included people living in that area. 1959, during 1959 election to the general election to the parliament, people from this area did participate in the election, voted, and until 1961, people in this area were paying regular land tax, and we have evidences of that. And we have maps which were published in 1827, 1846, 1856. But the thing is, I'm not going to go into details of that. What I'm saying is we're ready to sit down and talk about it, present our evidence. We'll be willing to sit down and look at the evidences India has to present. We are not asking for an inch of land that belongs to India. Yeah? We very strongly feel, we feel that our evidence is pretty strong. And then what we're saying is we'll present our evidence, we'll sit down and talk, and then resolve this. I guess that could be done when both sides will agree to sit down. That has not happened. During the initial phase of COVID crisis, the letter we received from India was, once both countries and societies are done dealing with the COVID crisis, we can sit down and resolve it through diplomatic means. We're waiting for that. As was rightly pointed out, virtual inauguration was done. And after the virtual inauguration was done, the remarks from Chief of Indian Army came, which suggested that Nepal is doing this at the prompting of another neighbor, which is very unfortunate. Some of the comments I'm seeing online also, a lot of people are thinking, why has China been brought into it? Why has Pakistan been brought into it? We have not brought it. I guess Indian media is fond of talking about China. Indian media is social network is fond of talking about China and Pakistan inducing Nepal to do it. No, and this is not something recent that has come up. As I pointed out earlier also, this has been there for 27 years. And then this, Ambassador Sood was right when he pointed out that we should have long before sat down and looked at the evidences and tried to resolve it. And then again, and this is not something that does not happen between two neighbors. I mean, this is not something that has not happened to either of our countries. I mean, we've resolved border issues with China back in 1960. 97% of the border is pretty clear between our two countries. Every time when the Joint Commission has sat down, we have always said, our Nepali side has said that once the entire border issue is resolved, then we'll sign the papers. At times we have heard from the Indian side that, I mean, whatever has been resolved, let's sign it and then work on the rest and resolve it. That's Indian position. So I guess certainly it's very important that both countries would have sense to sit down, resolve it. If it belongs to India, India keeps it. If it belongs to us, we keep it. But as far as constitutional amendment and all these issues are concerned, why should this be seen as something that has created more tension than it should have been? I mean, this is our position, and our evidences suggest that we strongly believe that this is our land, and we feel very rightful to put that in the emblem. We feel very rightful to put that in our map. This probably would not have been such had India not published a map which includes these part as an integral part of India. And that certainly prompted us, and I think was rightful for us to do what we did to present Nepal as we see Nepalese geographically.
Thank you, sir, for providing your answers. I would request Mr. Ajay Pradhan to respond.
Thank you. Let me just, speak to something Ambassador Sood mentioned about the inheritance of the maps by independent India after 1947. If I could just be impertinent to mention that, starting from 1816, when the Treaty of Sugauli was ratified, East India Company had prepared a series of maps starting from well before actually 1816 Sugauli Treaty, but I will just start from 1816. So there was on January 2nd, 1816, East India Company brought out a map that showed the Kali River starting from the headwaters in Limpiadhura, not in Lipu Lake and Kalapani area. Again, 1819, a map was prepared by Captain Webs of East India Company, showing the same thing as before. 1827, prepared by James Harbour, a hydrogeographer of East India Company, showing the same thing. 1835 map published by East India Company in London. 1837 by J.B. Tassin of East India Company, published in Persian actually. And then 1846, a map showing the headwaters of Kali River in Limpiadhura. 1846 map by William Allen. 1850 map by Deputy Surveyor General of India. And 1856 map, the last one that showed the Kali River starting from Limpiadhura, was published in 1856 by the Surveyor General of India. Now, after that, I recognize that the map was altered by India, but we have to recognize that alteration was not on a bilateral basis. It was unilateral, and it was never consulted. Nepal was never consulted, as far as I know, about the alteration of those, the leveling of the rivers from Limpiadhura to Lipu Lake. So that is one thing I think, India did inherited the maps, that were prepared after 1856. But both countries India as well as Nepal still have Treaty of Sugauli as the basis of the border issue on the west side of Nepal, and that treaty is not dead. And the section Article 5 of the treaty, which is still alive, clearly says that the Kali River is the boundary of Nepal. The dispute is not about whether or not Kali is the boundary. The dispute is which river in that area is the Kali River. If you look at all the series of maps that I mentioned just now listed, up until 1856, every single map showed the main stem upstream of Gunji, the village of Gunji, starting in the headwaters of Limpiadhura, is the Kali River. So based on that, Nepal does have a point, I believe. Now, I understand that India's position is different, and I'm not saying that India is wrong, but I believe it is wrong because it is a matter of, it is not a political matter. It's how rivers are determined as to whether or not they are the main rivers and tributaries. They're determined technically by hydrogeographers, watershed hydrologists, river morphologists, and that sort of thing. I think the negotiation will have to create some room for that technical, study in the area that, both sides, experts from both sides, or maybe independent experts should be given an opportunity to, speak to that issue. The other thing about the, amendment to Nepal's constitution incorporating the new map, I do not think I necessarily agree with, what has been said before. The alteration to the map is a course correction. If anything, it is a course correction by Nepal, because up until now, the historical maps didn't show the area that is under dispute as part of, the maps that I remember, reading in school curriculums and things like that. But it is a step taken by the Parliament of Nepal and the government of Nepal as an act of assertion of its sovereign rights that was derived from the Treaty of Sugauli. Treaty of Sugauli gave each country, both countries, India and Nepal, a clear, idea about what is the western boundary of Nepal and the eastern boundary of Uttarakhand, or at that time it was Uttar Pradesh, I guess. There is, the incorporation of the new map in the Constitution of Nepal, the amended Constitution of Nepal, I do not think it is such a bad thing, and I don't think it is a hurdle. If anything, it is a assertion of the sovereign territorial rights, and then that is also something that can be a starting point, at least from the perspective of Nepal, to begin a negotiation. Nepal has to say to India, okay, what we believe is ours should be clearly communicated, and I think that act is a reflection of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pradhan. Dr. Ambika, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mehta. I just got a note from the organizer that we've been given a 15 minutes grace. So in terms of time management, we have another 20 or 22 minutes remaining. We started just a couple of minutes late. So please do consider time. I hope you're available. I'm going back to Ambassador Sood with the same framing question that Simi Mehta asked, which is basically the gamut of relationship between the two countries is very extensive. And there are also emotional issues. Like I mentioned before, Nepal also has an aspiration to be a modern nation state. 30 million people, it looks very small just because it's between the two giants. Otherwise, it's a reasonable sized country. And given all of that strategic feeling and some sort of the feeling that the other side triggered event, Ambassador Sood, you've been ambassador to Nepal. You're a very keen observer of all of these things. What would be your opinion going forward, how these issues could be resolved, and how would you react?
Thank you. Well, I think I'm very glad that Dr. Pradhan has said that after 1856, the maps showed a different alignment. India was not an independent country till 1947. And so I would have thought that perhaps the British had a political agent. The office of the political agent existed in Kathmandu after the Treaty of Sugoi. So perhaps if this was taken up, because I have seen every single Nepali map actually aligned the way it is. Secondly, even if the alignment of the map, and these are survey maps, mind you, I have here a letter which is dated 5th of September 1817 by the then Secretary to the Governor General of India. And he is writing on, mind you, this is 5th of September 1817. And this is a letter addressed to the Commissioner of Kumaon. And he says, the Governor General approves your having declined to transfer to Chautra Bumsa, the two villages of Kunti and Nabi in Pargana Byanse, without the specific orders of the government on the grounds of their being situated to the west of the stream, ordinarily recognized as the principal branch in that quarter. On examination of the maps transmitted by you and of the facts and circumstances detailed by you and Lieutenant Webb, the same person who Dr. Pradhan referred to, it has left no doubt on the mind of the Governor General that the stream denominated Kalapani is that which is to be considered as the principal branch of the Kali. And as such, it is to be held the boundary between the possession of the two states as a question of equity and just construction of the treaty. He goes on to further say, you are authorized to pay Bumsa Sonat rupees 140.13 on account of the revenues of the villages of Tinkar and Chonguru. I mean, this is 1817. So, I mean, I would say that the British very clearly, even in 1817, the local Raja or the local Chaudhry would have raised this, and it was dismissed in 1817 itself. And the revenues of those two villages, and so that is how. So I frankly think that it is a little bit difficult. I mean, Nepal as a sovereign state should have taken it up with the office, with the political agent of Britain who was posted in Kathmandu from time to time. And so therefore it's a little bit difficult now to take this up at this stage. Yes, we agreed to talk about it. And as I said right at the outset, I think we should have dealt with it more seriously. But then, you know, I can tell you about a number of issues from the 1990s. We've had the successive prime ministers of Nepal have raised the issue of the 1950 treaty. We have always agreed to talk about it. And I can tell you that when I was there, and every time there would be the foreign secretary level talks, or the foreign minister was coming, and I would go to the foreign ministry to discuss the agenda for the talks. And I would say, well, should we take this up? And I would invariably be told, no, we don't want to take it up. We'll wait. We haven't done we need to do some more preparatory work for us. And it had never been taken up. But what this example shows is that you can't let differences spend indefinitely, because then differences become disputes. That is one. Secondly, I would like to submit that civil servants do not have the mandate. I mean, I heard what Dr. Pradhan said about, and Dr. Rijal also said, that why should the fact that there is a constitutional amendment, why should that make a difference? I'm afraid it makes a hell of a lot of difference, because I do not think that, even forget a Nepali foreign secretary, even the Nepali Prime Minister will have to get a mandate from the Parliament to be able to discuss something. Unless, of course, the purpose is only to say that, okay, this is it, take it or leave it. If that is the case, then obviously then there is no room for talks. And so that is why I think that the amendment, passing of a constitutional amendment, is something which, as I said at the outset, it will be remembered as Prime Minister Oli's lasting legacy for having created an insurmountable obstacle in the bilateral relationship. It will take a very, very brave Prime Minister to be able to discuss, somebody who knows that, because whatever be the outcome of the discussions, it will require another constitutional amendment in Nepal. Isn't it? That would be, I mean, I would think that that is absolutely essential then. Finally, I mean, I think that, again, it is, therefore, I frankly, I don't see how we can get around it in the near term and through talks. I mean, at most, what we can try and do is perhaps when the prime ministers meet at some political level, they will have to find a way out to see as to what is going to be the way to resolve it. But it certainly cannot be foreign secretary level talks, because I don't think civil servants have the mandate to overturn or even to discuss or even to negotiate on a constitutional amendment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Sood. So given the limited time, we've also been getting a lot of questions from the chat box. I'm going to ask the similar question to Major General Chakraborty, who spoke about his excellent relationship and his feeling with the overall relationship with Nepal and India. So I'm going to give him the opportunity to think of that whole gamut, very wide relationship. This is only one of the irritants, just one item, which probably can be resolved. But I'm also going to build in just a couple of the chat box questions to him. One of them is, why does, there's a question, why does India like to play Big Brother? I listened to Ambassador Sood's and Mr. Dixit's interview, and Mr. Dixit says, well, India is big and India is your brother, but it's not a big brother. But you know, that was his point of view. So Major General Chakraborty, if you could dwell on some of these emotional aspects and the wider relations that we have in terms of dealing and analyzing this issue, that will be greatly appreciated.
Oh, thank you. I just start firstly with the border itself. Now, very clearly, Nepal has been an independent country. You fought a war with the East India Company, not with the British. Dr. Pradhan brought out so many things, and you had your, I'll say, full sovereign rights to discuss. And the East India Company, as you know, went off post 1857. Even after that, all the dates that you are given, you had all the time, all the energy to discuss. You should have sorted out these issues. You have taken the maps. You had excellent relations with the British. As a matter of fact, the British Gurkhas went all the way and they remained a part of the Queen's zone. I mean, till the British couldn't afford to give you pensions. Well, India still affords to employ your people and give you. So you had the best of time and best of relations. We didn't form these borders. It was formed by you. What I think Dr. Pradhan brought out is really, which is the river. This has been discussed. I've gone through all the documents like Ambassador Rakesh Sood, right from 1816. And they were all army officers, lieutenants and captains, you know, of the British who are going. Some of them landed up with malaria. Some of them landed. And by the way, you must understand that you had the British agent sitting in Kathmandu. So, and he was really, he could be influenced. Why did Nepal do it? Well, these are issues purely as reply to Dr. Pradhan. Now come on to what do we do now? Well, it's a it's like, there's no silver bullet to what you have done. I'll put it very plainly. You have undertaken a constitutional amendment. That means all issues have now got to be discussed at only one level, which is the political level. It has crossed diplomatic level. It has crossed the, what should we say, even today with China, we have at least some understanding where at the military level we go and talk. You are here, you are there, and there's some way. So, well, in this case, it has to be a political level talk. And I'm sure that we are not so distant. Both the prime ministers know each other and they talk to each other. There's so many, as you said, Nepalese leaders have fought for our independence. You are a sovereign country, but you're fighting for India's independence. So the issue, definitely, like all issues, would be resolved. But by making a constitutional amendment, you have created a problem in the resolution. Well, it's a sovereign right. As I said, sovereign right, please include 5 more places. Your country. We cannot come in. And there's nothing in countries as big and small. I was a defense attaché in Vietnam. And Vietnam has defeated all the 4 countries. So it's all the 4 big powers who are sitting today there, including China. So there's nothing as big and small. You are a country, we respect you. So this question like India being a big brother, there's no question of a big or small. Well, see, the Nepalese boys, we used to call them Daju and we used to call them Guruji. These are words which are commonly used in Nepal, all right? But there's no question of India being any big brother, any small brother or something. We are very closely related. We love you. We accept you. I can tell you that no country, if you can give me one example, can a Canadian citizen join the United States Army or a Mexican citizen? Today, the Indian Army has 32,000 Nepalese boys. And you've got officers, you've got generals, you've got brigadiers. We have accepted them. So what is the elder brother and big brother? Today, a Nepalese colonel who may be my CO. He may be my brigade commander. And I may be posted in Kashmir under him. But who's the big brother then? I would be getting my 1 day's casual leave, and those of you who know how difficult in the army it is to get a day's casual leave, I'll be getting it from a Nepalese citizen. So where is the elder brother and big brother? We are equals, we believe in each other, we respect you, we respect your parliament, we respect your constitution, we respect all of you. And all issues have to be resolved by certain norms. And those norms have to be international norms. They cannot be something that, as Ambassador Sood correctly pointed out, which a diplomat can take on. See, once you reach a particular level, we cannot. And India definitely, I don't think, has any wrong notions. As a matter of fact, you should read Ambassador Sham Sharan's book, where I think is brought out very clearly. We would like to give Nepal all rights which we give to Indian citizens. So that's all we would like to say. And we are not, as I think very rightly, I remember reading Ambassador Sood's one article. India never asked for a reciprocal issue that we want property in Kathmandu for an Indian citizen. We have never asked you for these things. But we say, please come, settle down. My neighbor is a brigadier who belongs to Nepal. He stays just exactly 4 rooms away from me. He's staying here, and 6 months he spends in Kathmandu. 6 months he spends in Delhi. Now that is the relationship today. So it's nothing very great, which both of you have pointed out. I leave it to you, and it will be resolved. If we can, if people of your country can live with us, we can definitely resolve all these maps. I've been dealing with maps since I joined the NDA, which is now, I must say, 1952 years. I'm only seeing maps and maps and maps. And what did China do? What did Pakistan do? What did Bangladesh do? What did Myanmar do? We have problems with everybody. Don't think you're the only country. Whoever is there, there's problems even between houses in Kathmandu. People are fighting whether the gate should be here or not there. So these are issues. Please give us time, and only time will help us to resolve.
Thank you so much, Major General Chakraborty. Very passionate, lots of really good message on love and friendship. That's greatly appreciated. Now, in terms of the time, I think we got another 10 or 12 minutes remaining. And we will basically be asking some of the questions from the chat box. Why don't I ask Dr. Simi Mehta to pick up 1 or 2, and then I'll pick up 1 or 2, but these now have to be very briefly responded to.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. This set of questions is directed to Dr. Rijal and Mr. Ajay Pradhan, and you could take turns to answer this. So the question is from the fact that Nepal is a landlocked country, and Nepal import without using the Indian territory in the event of a further deepening of the border. How can the inflammatory and aggressive coverage by some media outlets on both sides be discouraged? And what kind of a time frame do you think would be necessary for a cooling down of the protests and misgivings so that a reasonable and friendly environment for a dignified discussion framework emerges? And also there is a lot of curiosity as to how has, what do you have to say about the move as being a sudden awakening on the map adjustment process? So over to you, Dr. Rijal. Dr. Rijal, are you here with us? Okay, I think he's having some.
We can start with Mr. Pradhan and then come back to Dr. Rijal.
Mr. Pradhan, please respond.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. I will just mention what General Chakraborty said, which really touched my heart. I actually was born in India, and I have great love for India and Indian people. Although I never became an Indian citizen, but I feel very close to India in every respect. I have traveled all across India, met many Indian people in my life, and have formed a really long-lasting friendship with a lot of Indian friends in Nepal and here in Canada as well. And when I was in the US, many friends there as well. So wherever I go, I mean, India is never too far from my heart. So, you know, what General Chakraborty said, there is no big brother, small brother relationship. And I really thank him for that statement because even though there is asymmetrical power relationship between the two countries are equal in terms of sovereignty. And this is something that I, in my own day job here in Canada, you know, always fall back on. I work as an advisor in the area of treaty negotiations with First Nations in Canada. And, you know, First Nations are small communities. And there is a great asymmetrical relationship between the country of Canada and the First Nations. But the negotiations, when begin, Canada never considers the negotiating parties as small or, you know, small brother or something like this. So thank you, General Chakraborty, about that statement. I really appreciate that. Now, in terms of the map issue, again, coming back to the amendment of the Constitution, the reason I said that I do not think it is such a big thing is that you have to, I think we have to go back to the Treaty of Sugouli. Treaty of Sugouli is the only bilateral, you know, agreement that touches upon the border on the western side of Nepal. And that really leaves us no, I mean, based on what has been agreed upon in the Treaty of Sugouli, Nepal's hands are tied. Either it has to accept India's position that the river originating from Lipu Lake is the actual Kali River. And if that is the case, then India, there is no claim for Nepal. But if India agrees that, you know, there are some evidences in the, in terms of the historical records, you know, maps starting from, you know, 1816 right up to 1869, and I acknowledge Ambassador Sood's reference to the 1817 map. Then I will speak to that in just a moment. But you know, either
Mr. Pradhan, could we be in the interest of time a little brief, please? That would be appreciated by from everyone.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, the issue is, you know, for Nepal, it is either, you know, agree with the one, you know, river or the other river as being Kali. And so the amendment to the Constitution is basically a reflection of that India and Nepal's position that, you know, the Kali River, starting from Limpiadura, is the the actual Kali River. Then the other one is just a tributary, based on all the scientific and physical parameters. And we're not getting into all the scientific analysis of that thing. And this is the kind of things that I think will be discussed across the table when the negotiations start. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I do not think I will have a lot of time to speak on the details of the evidence we have, but still, I guess, two things I would like to quickly point out. Back in 1815, a letter from Lord Hastings, dated June the 1st, what it says is, the eastern boundary will be the Kali, which rises in the snowy mountains and pursues nearly a direct southerly course to the plains, where it assumes the name of Gogra. That's one. And second, I would like to read when Bhutia, landlord of Kumaon, retained 3 villages of Kunji, Nabi, and Kuti, and then rulers of Nepal protested. And the letter that I would like to quote the letter, John Adams' letter, who was acting secretary at that time. He wrote a letter to Z.W. Trell, Commissioner of Kumaon, to surrender those villages to the regime of Nepal, with a copy of letter to Edward Gardner and the resident commissioner of British India in Kathmandu then. So these are the issues that when we sit down and discuss, we can present our evidences. India can present its evidences. So if the land belongs to us, it should stay with us. But if it does not belong to us, we're not asking for India's land to be included in Nepal. And the reason we did the constitutional amendment is we strongly feel this is our land, and we need to get it back from India. But that's something that should be raised during negotiation. Another thing, let me quickly point out, I was trying to fathom what roti-beti relationship meant. I was not very clear, because to me, roti is not my staple. A lot of people in the plains where I come from, their staple is roti. But for me, dal bhat is a staple. To many Nepalese living in hills, mountains, and even plains of the Nepal, dal bhat is a regular staple. So, and then roti certainly is very important for you. And then I was thinking, beti part is there. Then I was trying to find out why roti, this term comes. Then all of a sudden, when I started hearing General Chakraborty, then I started realizing that back in history, there was a time when we fought for India. When we fought for India, maybe the perception was Gorkha mercenaries fought for Nepal, fought for India, and they are still being paid handsomely in terms of pensions until today. I guess if that's a perception, that perception has two things. I would say very strongly that if that perception is not going to change, Nepal might be a very small country, but we believe that the international relationship has to be conducted on a sovereign equality basis. I very strongly and politely would like to assert that. Second thing, which I saw in the chat box and also in the pointers that were sent to us, citizenship for Indians marrying Indian women marrying a Nepali man. Nepal is trying to amend the law so that it becomes more difficult. She has to wait for 7 years. It is not just about Indians. My daughter-in-law is a Chinese American. She has nothing to do with India. She has never even set her foot in India. But she also will have to wait for 7 years to get the citizenship. And I am very strongly opposed to that. I think culture is very important. I very strongly support that there has to be a way for her to get the citizenship if she wants to get the citizenship of Nepal. If she does not want, that's her choice. But tying anything Nepal does to bilateral relationship between Nepal and India, and thinking that Nepal cannot think of the best interest of Nepal, and India as an age-old friend has to think for the best interest of Nepal, that perspective has to go away. And that's creating trouble. I guess I was a little blunt, but I thought it would be good that I bring it up so that perspective on both sides would be heard pretty well. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, sir. There's just a follow-up question, if you could just be briefly able to answer it. The question was about how would Nepal import low-value bulk commodities using the Indian side of the territory in the event the border dispute deepens? Could you provide your perspective?
I would not even like to think that the border dispute will deepen to that level, and then we'll see something of the sort that we saw in 2015 to what we popularly refer to as India blockading Nepal. I cannot imagine that happening. If anybody is mulling that's something that could be done, that's very unfortunate thinking.
Okay. Dr. Mehta, if I may, I would want to ask a very quick question to Ambassador Sood and General Chakraborty. And in the interest of time, we've been getting quite a few interesting questions on the chat box. One of them relates to the initial framework that I was putting in. The aspiration of the modern Nepali states are different. There's a very large diaspora, at least 1 million people of Nepali descent living in developed countries permanently. And of course, we have migrant workers, which is another 4 or 5 million people. So in the last 10, 20, 30 years, things have changed. The way that the Nepalese think are not exactly with the way that maybe Mr. Pradhan and myself think. I also studied in India and Gujarat. It's like my second home. But the new generations kind of treats the world equally, and they value the Indian relationship, but they also want to assert their kind of independence and equality and justice. So from that perspective, Ambassador Sood and Major General Chakraborty, any points of view that you have, these things like a palm of your hand?
Thank you. Well, I think that the point has been made both by Dr. Pradhan and by Dr. Rijal that Nepal has to be treated and with equality and so on. And I think General Chakravorty has also said that at no stage do we think of Nepal in any way other than as dealing with a sovereign equal nation. And if anything, we have tried to be as magnanimous or as generous. I mean, this is, we can go into a lot of details about various programs that we've done, etc., which continue to date. I mean, 3,000 scholarships, tens of millions of dollars on flood control and management and things like that, over 100 million, and all kinds of things. I mean, we were even when the unfortunate earthquake took place, I mean, the largest contribution that was announced, which was by India of $1 billion, 40% grant. I mean, so I don't think we have, other than being as generous as we can be, I think have, there is no question, in my mind at least, that we would look at Nepal as a sovereign state and respect its sovereignty. So having said that, I would say that in terms of looking at how we want to deal with fundamentals of the issue, I think when I was there, I used to hear a lot of misperceptions about the 1950 treaty. And 1950 is the first treaty that India is signed with Nepal. And this time it was an independent India and an independent Nepal, and we signed this treaty. And so I read the treaty. And after that, I actually organized a 3-day conference among Nepalese and Indians just to discuss the 1950 treaty and to clear some of the misperceptions that have become so prevalent among the people, that it is an unfair treaty, it is an unequal treaty, that it is a treaty that was imposed. I can tell you, having gone through the history, that it was actually a treaty that the Nepalese regime sought. And they came, they sought it for the simple reason that the Nepalese regime was extremely nervous at the Maoist revolution having taken place in China and the Chinese having come into Tibet. And they felt that they needed to solidify their relationship with India. And that is how the 1950 treaty was done. And that's where the motivation came from. And it is actually a rehash of the 1923 treaty, which Nepal had with British India. And I think today, if we want to, if there is a major change, Dr. Adhikari, as you're talking about, and yes, then perhaps Nepal should come out and say how they want that fundamental treaty to be renegotiated. What should be the contours of that? I think it would be a good idea instead of, because I know this for a fact, and as I mentioned, when we actually come around to having official level talks, since the prime ministers on both sides have agreed for the more than 25 years now that we are ready to review and update. And incidentally, we had a very similar treaty with Bhutan. It was signed in 1949. It was also called the Peace and Friendship Treaty with Bhutan. Now, obviously, the same changing demographics and all that. 2007, we reviewed and updated, and we signed a new 2007 Peace and Friendship Treaty with Bhutan. So it's, from our side, I don't think there has been any reluctance on that score. Perhaps if we need to, we should relook at the fundamentals, and perhaps maybe when we start relooking at that, Nepal can, if Nepal feels that it has been treated with less than equal this thing, I think it will show up very clearly that actually the treaty has enormous privileges and advantages to Nepali citizens, because the rights are extended or exercised not on a reciprocal basis, but on a non-reciprocal basis. And so we need to, but somehow or the other, the reality hasn't come out. So maybe we need to have some conversations. And I think it is important that one thing that I feel about quite strongly is that we have had close interactions at an official level, at a political level, but somehow at a people-to-people level, despite the fact that there is a certain relationship, a historical, religious, linguistic, cultural relationship, but nonetheless, there are certain long-standing myths that have been generated which need to be dispelled. And I think it is important that we try and dispel those, because this is what leads to that anti-Indian sentiment which creeps up from time to time. I remember when, we all remember some innocent comment. In fact, General Chakravorty was saying in his first comment, he said, when he goes to Pokhara, he feels very much at home. I remember Madhuri Dixit actually once made that comment, that when I go to Nepal, I feel as if I'm in India. And it led to an enormous controversy because she said that Madhuri Dixit is being expansionist. Now, I'm quite sure she had no intention of being expansionist or taking over Nepal's territory, but that is how her statement was interpreted. So I think that, and why? Because there is that groundswell of an anti-Indian sentiment, and then vested interests, and today it is a social media dominated age. So things get amplified, echo chambers get created, tweets go viral, and it reduces the space for reasoned discussion. Talking as reasonable people, you have a difference, let's talk about it, let's try and sort it out. But when you try to do these things through Twitters and tweets and things like that, then you tend to polarize opinions and polarize positions. And I think that is what is happening between India and Nepal. And somehow, the TV channels was referred to. I think these TV channels are a terrible thing. They run contrary to any kind of successful diplomacy, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador. So a lot of really good insights. Very quickly, because we are running out of time, very quickly to Major General Chakraborty. I mean, I appreciate all your points. I've lived from Nepal, but I studied in India, so 5 years, and I've also lived in Canada and the US. Sometimes there are perceptions in a smaller country of a little super sensitivity to a very large neighbors. And Major General talked about the people-to-people relations, which are going to be very important on this bill. And it's not only on the individual level, like being a Nepali, I teach Indian students here, the relationship are different. And then when I go to an Indian teacher, the relationships are different. But on the state to state, sometimes maybe there's a little bit of extra sensitivity in a smaller country. So maybe that's where it is coming from, but we got to be more realistic as we also become more mature. But I would like to hear your opinion very briefly, just in a couple of minutes, on how to build that state-to-state community relationship and give a perception of equal respect to the communities.
First thing, I think I agree with Ambassador Sood that the 1950 treaty must be looked at and reviewed. And let's come out with a new treaty so that both the countries can look into all these issues which you are saying. And after all, if that was done, after India became independent. So once you get that, like we have done it with Bhutan, let's say with Bangladesh, we have today got the entire border issue resolved. We are solving the Tista River issue. I mean, I'm sure Dr. Pradhan would be knowing all these issues much better than what we know. Now the point is about the newer generation coming in and about the social media and all this. Well, I must admire one thing. Even in the Indian Army, we are getting, by the way, there's no shortage of Nepalese people joining us at the younger level, both as officers and also below officers rank. Some of the Nepalese people are flying the Indian Air Force aircraft, you can imagine. And they are doing it very well. But there is a sizable population which today has aspirations, as you correctly said, which cannot be fulfilled, and they cannot be fulfilled in any country. Whether it's the United States, whether it's China, whether it's India, these aspirations are not related to your and my generation. They are related to younger thoughts, and possibly, as Ambassador Sood brought it, the internet has come in such a big way that the internet has caused a revolution of all affairs in the younger generation. And everybody gets a crisp issue. Instead of going into details, you try to make everything a fast food. Everything has been related to a hamburger or to a hot dog. And, the news has also got, or issues also get, what you call, get into a sandwich issue. So therefore, it's important for us to allow more people-to-people contact. I mean, to say there's no harm. I think we should, as Ambassador Sood brought out, we have a few scholarships. We can increase the number of scholarships, allow more students to come into our universities. I think that, and we also should send, because today I was surprised, my mother was not well, and there was a Nepalese cardiologist. They are good pulmonologists. Don't think that they are only in the Indian Army as officers. They are today engineers. They are today building India's roads. I think once they become engineers, doctors, and they enter the academic fields in a bigger way, I think this perception would get correctly managed. You can only manage it. You cannot today convince everybody, well, India is this thing. There will be always small little issues which will always remain. Maybe our generation was more sympathetic to each other and we could possibly take them in stride. But definitely, I think one way is we allow these things to happen. And from our side, we would do everything to make Nepalese people, particularly the younger generation, comfortable. I think one thing that struck me is, you see, today you have become a secular country. But all said and done, a sizable population of yours can visit our temples in big numbers, and maybe we could create good accommodation for you to allow that to happen so that they feel happy. After all, bulk of your population belong to one religion, and then you got Buddhists also. We have lovely sites, so you have Lumbini. We all go to Nepal and we go to the Pashupatinath Mandir. So similarly, India could encourage you to go to Amarnath, to go to Badrinath and all these places. And maybe the younger generation would see how common we are when we visit these lovely sites. Also, your Muslims and Christians could come to our various places. Now that you are a secular country, it's very easy. I think, as a matter of fact, now it's become very easy if we really start opening up with each other with an equality platform. That's all that is needed.
Right. Thank you so much, Major Chakraborty. Very well said. Thank you so much. So, given the interest of time, Dr. Mehta, maybe you want to have one very quick remark, maybe from Dr. Rijal, and then we can probably begin to close. We have lots of questions here, but I think we have time.
So there's a, yes.
Can I quickly say something?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes.
sir. Please.
Yeah. First, I am one of the fiercest critics of Prime Minister Oli. But when I hear some of the things said about him in India by Indian policymakers in some of the seminars, webinars that I've been to, I mean, I really feel bad that I do not, as a citizen of Nepal, I would not say about Prime Minister Modi what opposition leader Rahul Gandhi says about him. That's not my right. I do respect things that are domestic to India, and I would like to see that policymakers in India, when they say anything about Prime Minister Oli, they would be ill-advised to put the things the way I do. I mean, I'm a citizen of Nepal, I'm a member of opposition, and my role is different from my very beloved friends and colleagues in India when they and they should respect that parameter when they criticize Prime Minister Oli. Second, we have raised this issue, the border issue. I mean, this has to be resolved through diplomatic means. But when we say that, and the way, and when we assert that, please understand, we are not trying to undo everything that's bilateral between Nepal and India. There are many things that will stay the way they have been in the past. But having said that, we cannot just go turn our ears deaf to the border issue that's there burning, and any Nepali would consider to be very important and of paramount significance to our nationhood.
Great. Thank you so much, sir, for your
Thank you.
final.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in the interest of time, I would hold back my comments, but what is established is that both countries should show their mutual interest in the wonderful neighborly relation, and we should sit down and discuss the border issues with the evidences and have a logical conclusion to this. So without further ado, thank you very much to everyone. And I would now request Dr. Arjun Kumar, Director of Impact and Policy Research Institute, and Mr. Parshu Nepal, Director of International Development Institute, to formally come up and give the vote of thanks. Dr. Arjun Kumar, over to you.
Shall I go first, or Parshu sir should go?
Yes, that's okay. Arjun, you can start.
Okay, thank you. I'll just be very brief, and I would like to propose a vote of thanks. And in this uncertain and challenging COVID-19 times, and under this monsoon weather, the dynamic and excellent state of India-Nepal relations that are deep, comprehensive, and multifaceted is faced with this Kali River and border issues in the short terms. And this really calls for the need to further deepen bilateral relations for the benefit of the people of both our countries. Our mutual commitment to work towards strengthening bilateral relation on the basis of mutual trust, goodwill, mutual benefit with regard to each other's aspirations, sensitivities, and interests, and also of the younger generation. Thank you all. I would like to very much thank our panelist, Ambassador Rakesh Sood sir, Dr. Minendra P Rijal sir, Member of Parliament, Republic of Nepal, Major General Dr. P.K. Chakravorty sir, thank you sir very much, and Mr. Ajay Pradhan, Senior Policy Advisor at Government of Canada. And I would also like to thank our moderators, Dr. Simi Mehta from IMPRI, and Dr. Ambika P Adhikari sir from City of Tempe, Arizona, Principal Planner. And I would also like to thank our partner, International Development Institute, for organizing this excellent talk. And this is the real and academic kind of partnership and platform both of our organizations learn from your experience. It is vast experience and history and all the facets which the light you have shed. It's really very heartening and enlightening. And thank you very much. I would now also invite Parshu sir, Director, IDI, to have the closing words. Sir, please.
Thank you, Arjun. Well, I think many things has been said already, and I don't want to repeat things, in a sense of time. But I sincerely would like to thank our partners, especially IMPRI and all the panelists and the moderators, Ambika P and the Simi. I would like to thank for carrying out this important discussion, and we hope to have this kind of discourse in coming weeks and months as well. I thank you, all the panelists and the viewers for the interest and participating in this program. Thank you.
So before we just sign off, can we have everyone turned on their video so that I can just take a quick group photograph? Yes, thank you.
Suman sir, yes.
There we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good evening and have a very good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Rakesh,
thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ambassador Sood, thank you.
Thank you.